Welcome to the Investor Coaching Show, a podcast to help you get an insider's view of the financial world and escape common investment traps. We look at the financial news of the day and help you make sense of it so you can relax about money. And here's your host, Paul Winkler.
All right, we're back here on the Investor Coaching Show. Paul Winkler along with Evan Barnard and Arlene Brown. All right, you go, Evan. I'm looking at something else over here.
Well, we're between Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Yeah.
And it is the season. Everyone's starting to have their office Christmas parties and so forth, traveling. And ran across an interesting article, 6 conversations about money to have with your family over the holidays. So, you kind of have those cardinal rules, certainly in our extended family.
One conversation every 2 days for the 12 days of Christmas.
There you go.
I was just doing the math.
and times 6 people in the family, it's 32 conversations.
Oh, stop.
You say you don't talk about politics or religion, but very rarely do you end up having a holiday conversation around money, right? I mean, it just doesn't typically happen. Interestingly
You've been in my house, have you?
Well,
no, I'm joking.
No,
we really don't.
We do. And so,
really?
Part of the American Dream experience, we talk about breaking the no-talk rule. And what you can't talk about constrains you. And very few people do talk about money, certainly intergenerationally. Mm-hmm. And a couple years ago, we started a very interesting trend in the family of when we get together at Christmas, we actually kind of review the extended family finances and let people know, where the wills are and all this kind of stuff. And, we just kind of revisit all that. It's a little bit maudlin for Christmas Eve. Like, hey, if we die, here's
watching
what's
the Christmas
happen.
Carol, and they're going, wait, people do die.
But, on the positive side, you are going to be together with people that you don't necessarily maybe spend time with. Huh. And so number one was conversations to have with your parents. The author, Amy Arnott, is basically a tweener. She has she has 20-year-old kids, and she has elderly parents, and she and her husband are there, kind of in the middle. A lot of people fit that category. Mm-hmm. In many families, money is a taboo topic. But as parents or other relatives age, their adult children often get more involved in their financial lives. Some of it is to make sure they don't get scammed.
Right.
And then some of it is to maintain an awareness. And I think you and Jim even talked about this 3 or 4 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Maintain an awareness of their cognitive abilities. Are they starting to have challenges handling money, and as more things, are on an app on the phone, you're not using cash.
Yeah, we have a series of questions that we actually have that were put together by our legal team to do that. Yeah, for sure.
And so just have that conversation. And some of these are challenging, but just ask, how are they doing? Do you, Mom and Dad, am I going to have to take care of you if something happens? Do you have long-term care insurance or, those kind of things?
And parents can feel very, very uncomfortable with that conversation.
Oh, it's very uncomfortable.
And I have conversations with people. I'm just thinking of situations that I've had where somebody feels like that they've made so many bad decisions in their life. Now they're really embarrassed to be dependent upon their kids. And I've had to talk to them about how, these kids have done fairly well because you made some sacrifices when you were younger, and they become more successful as a result of it. And, trying to reframe that, but it's not an easy thing. I mean, when you're in that position where you're dependent upon your kids, that doesn't feel good.
Oh, for sure.
It takes a lot of courage and humility to talk about those things.
It does. And you do end up having to separate what happened. Okay, I made a bad decision or this or that. Or, you might have lost a job. Right. And that consumed a lot of your emergency fund.
Or had a marriage breakup for reasons that were well beyond your control.
That doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means you lost some money. Mm-hmm. But the interesting thing is, if there's a challenge that they're having, the adult children really need to know about that early enough so that you can do some estate planning. Maybe you can do some Medicaid planning, or at least start looking for resources to help your parents out, and that kind of stuff. But you have to, it's just, none of us are mind readers.
And the reality of it is, this is the hard thing for people as we get older, to admit that our cognitive capabilities aren't what they used to be.
Sure.
That's where the humility is.
Or do we even know?
Exactly.
Or do we even know?
And I've talked about this before, how it's interesting that how people actually, they become more confident even if they are less competent.
Oh, well, that's
as they get older.
the gap between competence and, yeah.
And even, asking them about their living arrangements. Hey, are you guys doing okay getting up and down the stairs? Do we need to start shopping for a 1-floor house? And maybe you need to, just those kinds of things, just having those conversations so that you're not dealing with an emergency, you're getting ahead of a potential issue.
I think the thing, from a family standpoint, for the younger people to keep in mind is recognize that this is going to be a challenging conversation for your parents, because the dynamic has always been that they have taken care of you.
Yep.
Throughout their entire life. And to talk to them about it going, hey, Mom, Dad, you know what? I wouldn't be where I am in life if it weren't for you. Yeah. I'm okay helping out. I really am. It's you're robbing me of my blessing is sometimes the way I put it. You're robbing me of my blessing if I can't help you out in some way and give back to you in some way. So I think that's something to keep in mind if you're one of the younger people that has that situation with older parents that are listening.
Yes. And, we're assuming at this point that the middle family has the resources to help. It may be that you don't have necessarily a lot of resources.
It's quite possible.
Maybe this conversation leads to, hey, we move in together to one house. You can solve a number of issues, but you need to have the conversation just to see what you can do.
For sure.
Then looking at conversations to have with your kids. What do they need to know about your finances? Just like it's awkward for your parents to answer the question, now you're the one telling your children, hey, I didn't make much last year, or we did well, or we were doing fine and we could send our grandkids to college, but then we had COVID and I didn't work for 18 months. But let them know the situation that you're in.
They may take some pressure off of you because they recognize that you're not the gravy train that they thought you were. Right.
And, let them know who beneficiaries are, all those kinds of things. And
maybe not.
I'm joking. I've had
and where they are, where the paperwork.
It's interesting.
I'm what? I'm not in the will.
I've had conversations with parents over the years that they really don't want to let the children know, and even if you don't go into amounts, which I actually would encourage you to do, but if there is going to be a lopsided distribution within the family, you really want to talk about that before there's the lopsided distribution in the family.
Yeah, because sometimes the people that end up with the high side of the lopside end up not being liked very much.
That's correct.
And sometimes there's a reason for it. There may be an economic need for one person in the family because of a special need or something that. Sure.
And that's why doing that, you'll have time to explain
exactly
why.
And
the reason, because there's reasons.
Absolutely.
Well, it's like
Very
arguments, discussions between spouses is the next topic, but most people already are aware. You're just making it clear. If someone knows this person has 6 children and these 2 single people are making $500,000 a year, gee, that makes sense for, the single parent to get a bigger it's not a surprise. And then conversations to have with your spouse or partner. Are you on track with your budgeting plans? And, what are the shared goals for your future together? Just revisit what you even want to accomplish.
That is what I like. What are the shared goals?
Yeah, well, and a lot of times what happens is one person doesn't want to be involved in the finances and therefore may be spending at a level that's much different than what they would if they were aware of what was going on economically in the couple. Let's say, and it doesn't have to be the male or the female, but one or the other. Sometimes you have somebody that's a financial phobic, that's the male. Sometimes the financial phobic is the female.
Yep.
And what happens is they don't know what's going on and they spend at a level and the other one's having a nervous breakdown because too much money's being spent. So it's good to have that conversation. Hey, here's what's actually going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Very few people actually have a Doritos economy in their family of spend all you want, I'll make more.
Oh, thank you. You have to explain.
Eat all you want, we'll make more.
I have no idea what you're talking about. What are Doritos?
Spend all you want, I'll make more.
Okay, help me out.
That's not realistic for most people.
Okay. Yeah. So is that it?
Yeah.
Was that all of them?
Yeah.
Oh, man. So that's an easy conversation. It's not going to take us long to have that conversation at all.
No.
Yeah, there's a couple things. Let the kids know what's going on. Let the kids, we're going to cut you off. You're out of the will. You're not going to be a beneficiary of my IRA anymore.
Evan,
and
yeah.
that's it.
So who is going to open the conversation? You
in our family or in this article?
No, in this article.
It's written from the standpoint of the middle couple, the me and Cindy in this case, talking to parents or children. But, if you're a 25-year-old child out there, or, we were talking about Charlie Munger earlier, his kids are 75.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with you starting that conversation. And I liked your lead in, Paul, of, hey, you guys have done a great job. I'm not waiting for you to kick the bucket. I'm wanting to learn more what's going on in our finances. I think there's ways to phrase it. So really anyone in that hierarchy, I think, could start the conversation.
Because I was just wondering if the parents open up and say, is there something wrong? Are you dying?
Yeah, they could. Yeah.
Yeah, we never talk about anything serious at Christmas time. What are you guys doing?
Are you dying?
Did you have too much eggnog, or what's going on?
Right. Yeah. But thinking about budgeting, just since we have a teeny bit of time, Mint shut its doors.
What? Wait! I missed that. Did they really?
Yeah. So Intuit bought them several years ago. The same company that does TurboTax and Credit Karma and all that. Mint.
Yeah. Mint does software.
Mint has shut down.
I did not know that.
It was either like 2 days ago or maybe a month ago.
How did I miss that one?
But they just, it wasn't a profitable division for them, or they just don't want it. But I was a Mint user. That's how I tracked the finances, because Cindy and I could, check it on the app and we could see what's going on.
I always said just use the stuff that we have for because I thought it was better, but I didn't know.
Well, yeah. So anyway, there's a lot of budgeting programs out there, kind of like Mint, and tracking expenses and so forth. So if you're a Mint user, you probably need to be looking. And if you've never tracked your expenses, there's all kinds of technology out there to make that process easier. Whether you're, if you're a client of ours, you can use our system.
You need a budget or something like that?
YNAB.
YNAB.
Thank you.
YNAB.
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
You need a budget. Okay.
There's another one called Monarch Money.
Wow.
Yeah.
What is it?
Monarch Money is another one. There's several.
Now, you need a budget costs, but it's fairly reasonable.
None
it's
of these
not
are
much.
more than $60 or $70
I was going to say,
$60
$60 a year is what it seems to me
like
that I remember that it was. And then I had one client that said that she absolutely, it was the best money that she'd ever spent before.
Everyone I know that uses YNAB is a huge fan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I apparently it's pretty good stuff. So that me, the way I budget is totally different. It's basically I save a lot.
I save everything but gasoline and food.
I save a lot, and then I spend the rest. That's my budget.
That's right.
That's the way. Seriously, it's the only way I've ever operated.
You would never make it in government, Paul.
I would have never made it as a financial planner. No, no. Wait.
Save
I
what
did.
you
Wait,
want
what?
and spend the rest.
I didn't make it as what? No, I didn't. It was that for me, just saving first and then spending was what was left over. But I know how to budget, obviously.
Sure. Yeah.
I've been doing financial planning for 35 years, but it's not how I actually approach it, where I sit there and go, this much for this particular area, that much for that particular area, that much. But apparently it works fairly well for people that like that discipline, or even people that don't like that discipline.
It does. I tend to budget like you do. And so I like Mint, and I download all my bank records every month into, Quicken anyway. Mm-hmm. I like to know where the money has gone and keep an eye on variance reporting. This goes back to
that's
consulting
the historian
days,
approach.
But
the historian approach. Kind of look back and see where it went.
Wow, a lot of that's eating out. That's a waste of money. I can do this.
Sure.
I do like to see where it went.
But in my thought process, this will put some people at ease, but my thought process is always, if I'm saving a percentage that is reasonable for my goal to retire with dignity, then if I want to blow it on new cars versus a used car, or eating out, which I don't ever eat out, we did we did this week. For once in like a very long period of time. But it's very unusual that I do that kind of thing. But that's kind of the way I've operated my life, is to just go save first and then spend what's left over. That was a la John Savage in the 1980s.
I stick to my 10-10-10.
If you want to scare yourself before Christmas, go into whatever system you use and sort by how many Amazon purchases you've made.
Oh,
in
no,
the last
you
3
don't want to
months.
know that. You don't want to know that. And Paul Winkler, Investor Coaching Show, Super Talk 997 WTN. Evan Barner, along with Arlene Brown. We'll be back right after this. Thanks for tuning in to the Investor Coaching Podcast. Now, you may be one of these people that's been listening and realizing, wow, investing, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye, and financial planning, tax laws constantly changing, and recognizing that maybe you might need some help in this area, but you don't want just anybody to help you out. So we have 10 offices in the Middle Tennessee area, and everything that we do is fee only. We align our interests with your interests. So you can get an initial 15-minute phone call with any one of our offices just by going to paulwinkler.com/call. That's it. Every one of the offices is run by somebody with 20 plus years experience. They're all degree planners. They all have academic backgrounds in investing, and you can get the help that you need. So if you want to set up a complimentary phone consultation, just go to paulwinkler.com/call. And we look forward to seeing you soon. All right, we're back here on the Investor Coaching Show. Paul Winkler, Evan Barnard, Elaine Brown. We were talking about, well, we came out of Thanksgiving, turkey stuff, right? I'm in a meeting, and Chad is talking to one of our clients, and he's talking about, I kind of like, thing that I heard somebody talk about, when you're taking income from your portfolio, don't kill the goose that lays the egg. And, he's talking about that and says, the thing is, and it was a pitch for an investment product, like maybe dividend-paying stocks or interest, owning bonds that kick off the interest and kick off interest and kick off interest, but you're never going back and taking the principal, right? Yeah. And this is the pitch, and we had to explain, and this is basically a sales pitch you're hearing. And Chad goes, he says, and Chad's, he's very folksy, right? Yeah. He's got the country boy kind of thing, and he goes, well, it's kind of like this. It's kind of like if you got a bunch of eggs, imagine that your chicken keeps laying eggs, and then progressively the eggs keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and eventually you just have to kill the chicken and eat the chicken. I was like really funny, because what he was talking about is, of course, if you have the same interest payment or the same dividends coming year after year after year after year,
right,
the purchasing power of the dollar keeps going down. Your egg gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And then eventually you do have to eat the chicken. You have to go in and spend down the principal if you're going to live.
Right.
And I looked at him, I go, I'm so stealing that. That is brilliant. That's brilliant. So defense stocks benefit from war, renewing ESG debate for everyday investors. So the whole idea of environmental, social governance, and they had this guy in this article in the Wall Street Journal. He comes across a tweet about U.S. weapons manufacturers last month that prompted him to investigate the stocks in his retirement account. He discovers that his 401k contributions were held in a target date fund that owns shares of military contractors such as Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman. 30-year-old mathematician, Cambridge, Massachusetts, disapproves of companies involved in nuclear weapons and controversial munitions that are restricted under international conventions. He moved most of his money into one of the only index funds available in the 401k that was basically an ESG fund that didn't hold any weapons.
So he thought, I'm sure.
Well, no weapons. So my question is this. Does this guy, lock his car? I mean, does he do something to protect himself from people that are evil? My guess is he probably does. And what is a defense contractor? Making stuff to protect a country from evil. Number one. Number two, if you look at these companies that are talked about here, and you say, well, what are these companies? Because they're talking about these companies that he wants to avoid, companies that are involved with nuclear weapons and controversial munitions. He's talking about Lockheed Martin. What do? High-end fighter jet fighter, aircraft. They have 2/3 of the revenue from the F-35, an airplane to protect against somebody that maybe not necessarily doing beneficial things to the United States.
Right.
He lives in a country that only is a country as long as he has somebody defending that country, right? Evan, go, man.
So, you're trying
to
read
me to a dog.
You're
I know.
trying to apply logic. Of course, as soon as you said Cambridge, Mass, I'm like, okay, he either went to MIT or Harvard or Boston College.
Yeah.
You know? But, it's interesting. A lot of times when we talk about people that are afraid of, worried about the government, and he's talking about defense stocks, but I wonder if he uses a bank account that's insured by the FDIC, which is the biggest consumer of defense products. The government buys all of this stuff. Does he use a government bond that buys jets and planes and ships and all that?
Good point. I mean, yeah, so the reality of it is kind of like with socially conscious investing. You can't avoid evil.
Sin is sin.
Yeah, it really is. Hey, this is Paul Winkler. Hope you enjoyed today's edition of the Investor Coaching Show. You want to learn more about what we do, go to our website, paulwinkler.com. You can watch some of the videos there, and if you're not already a client, you can set up a free initial consultation. Until next time, I'm Paul Winkler, reminding you that I believe that more educated investors are more confident investors, and confident investors are more successful investors. Have a great one. Advisory services offered through Paul Winkler, Inc., an SEC-registered investment advisor. The opinions voiced and information provided in this material are for general informational purposes only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine what investments are appropriate for you, please consult with a financial advisor. Paul Winkler, Inc. does not provide tax or legal advice. Please consult your tax or legal advisor regarding your particular situation.